living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
Do you know how much sugar is hiding in your foods? Many of us eat and drink more sugar than we realize. Even foods advertised as healthy could be packed with sugar. Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm your host, Beth Brown. Today, we're uncovering hidden sugar in foods and talking about how you can make sugar-smart decisions. Stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Joining us today is Carrie Fairbrother, who is a registered nurse, and she is certified in diabetes education and support. And thanks so much for being with us today, Carrie.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's dive right in and first define what is sugar, and is it considered a mineral? Is it something else? Can you just define it for us?
Sure. It's really a macronutrient, and it's a disaccharide. So it's a combination of monosaccharides, that means one, of glucose and fructose. And that's a fancy word to saying that's what table sugar is. And we know that as a macronutrient, it really does nothing beneficial for us.
Okay.
It is a carbohydrate, and we all know that we need carbohydrates to give energy to our brain and our cells all over the body. But the macronutrient part of sugar, what I consider table sugar, those kinds of sugars, we don't really need them. So we really should be looking at ways to eat less of them. And that's something that's happened because we're such a rich society that we have more, and it makes us want to eat more when we have it. And we've just finished Halloween, so we all know how that is with either ourselves or our kids. Yes.
So what does our body do with sugar then? What happens when we eat or drink it?
Well, when we eat or drink it, first of all, of course, it is a source of energy. So we could say that we're going to use some of it, but we don't need very much. So the rest of it, we process in our liver, and it actually will turn into fat. So it's excess. So if we would get our sugars instead from natural foods, naturally, say fruits and vegetables, etc., we'd be in much better shape. That excess doesn't do us any good.
Okay, well, and let's talk about some of the ways that excess can impact our bodies. Can you talk about what effect sugar has on our brain and our moods?
Well, it's really interesting. Most of us think about maybe after a big holiday meal, or maybe after the kids have eaten a lot of Halloween candy or something, they get a little bit of what we call brain fog. Now, actually, sugar has been compared to other addictions. So our brain, when all that sugar hits it fast, it gives that kind of a dopamine-like effect. So our body says, wow, except that we very quickly use it up. And so that actually is a cause of one of the things they say to try to eliminate if you have anybody who's having depression or anxiety, those feelings, it actually makes them feel worse, which kind of goes contraindicated to me saying, oh, it makes you feel up. But it's a very quick up and then a very big down. And so it's not really good for it. Our ancestors, though, who had very little, that same wanting the sugar, that reward system that you get when you eat it, the reason you want more, the reason when it's in our foods, it makes us want more, was actually helpful to making sure that our ancestors had enough calories and would seek food and wouldn't just give up. But today we're very plentiful, and we don't have that situation, so we don't need it.
Okay, that's interesting. What about our joints? Sugar is bad for our joints?
It's absolutely bad. And as you know, I also am dermatology related. That's another area I'm boarded in. And one of the crises we see are people with psoriasis having psoriatic arthritis. And that arthritis gets worse with extra sugar because sugar causes inflammation all over the body. So when you have inflammation, that causes your joints to hurt more. And so we actually find if people keep track of this, they notice a difference. They might feel more pain in their backs, et cetera, when they've just had this great big meal. And that brain fog usually takes over and they take a big nap. So we think of the big meal and then everybody on a hammock or on a couch. And that's all because of that extra sugar.
Okay, and you mentioned dermatology. What does sugar do to our skin?
It's terrible, actually. I think we could probably sell lowering sugar to most people by the fact that it changes the elastin and collagen over time because of something called glycation. And when that happens, your skin gets more wrinkly, more old looking. That would be enough for me to say, I don't want to do that. And actually for people that have excessively high blood sugars, because they probably have a condition called diabetes, then their skin actually can get very tight and not feel the normal skin way. So skin gets very harmed. So we really don't, anything I can think of. There's studies that show acne gets worse, psoriasis gets worse, eczema gets worse. It's generally, skin does not like having excess sugar.
You mentioned earlier too that sugar turns into fat. So I'm guessing that's why we gain weight if we eat excessive sugar?
Well, the excess sugar can't be used. So our body can't change it into anything that's good for us. So the liver, it gets stored. So it can be stored short term. Some of it can be stored for emergencies. So that would be good so that the liver can release it. But a lot of it will turn into fat. So there's even something, called a soda belly. And that's because they drink a lot of sodas and get this great big belly.
So sugar is sometimes found in fruits, or it's naturally in foods that we eat. Does our body treat that sugar differently?
It actually does, which is, something people don't want to hear, but it's really true. And it's a good thing, though, because we do need carbohydrates. Nobody's suggesting that we wouldn't have carbohydrates. It's just that highly refined sugar that we don't need. And certainly not, any of the fructose types of sugar that is the high level of fructose that they put in drinks, etc. But the sugar from foods is mitigated with also having the fibers, the nutrients, etc. If somebody ate exquisitely large amounts of fruit, more than you and I could imagine, that could be a little troublesome. But normally the fruits and vegetables, the things we get our natural sugars from, that's great for us.
Okay, great.
Fiber and nutrients.
Okay, thank you. So it is time to take a break, Carrie. So we need to pause here for just a couple minutes. But when we come back, we're going to talk about where sugar might be hiding in foods, even those foods that claim to be healthy. So stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. We're talking with Carrie Fairbrother, who is a registered nurse, and we're talking about hidden sugar. And thanks for sticking around and continuing to chat with us about this, Carrie. So let's talk about some of the foods where people might be a little bit surprised that there's actually a possibility it's really high in sugar. And can we start with yogurt, and especially yogurt that has fruit in it? Are there some yogurts that are healthier than others? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So when you're eating yogurt, you're eating sometimes more than 50% of just the ingredients that are added to it instead of the yogurt. Even if it says it's, healthy, etc., you need to read the label. And my advice absolutely is buy the plain yogurt. I prefer the Greek because it has more protein, and I'm trying to give my family good nutrition. So I buy the Greek yogurt plain. Fat or non-fat depends on other issues in your body, but either one, you're not going to have that high sugar amount. And what you're going to do is have high protein and then add to it. It also ends up being cost effective. Your own fruit, whether it's chopping up an apple or whether it's frozen berries or fresh berries, you can do that and have an absolutely delicious treat. Make it look like a parfait to yourself instead of just yogurt, and enjoy it and not have all those additives. It's mostly sugar. If you read your label, even the ones that say they're pretty good, they might say 25% less sugar. Well, 25% less of what? Mm-hmm. Still high. Okay. So we're concerned about that. And other foods that I think people don't even think about that have sugar in them would be, think of your fast food. So the kids want chicken McNuggets. They have a lot of fructose in them, believe it or not, which it appears that fructose, because it's actually metabolized a different way, causes you just to want more and doesn't sate you. You don't feel full. So it makes you want to eat more and more, which is one of the reasons we're concerned about it with our concern in America for obesity. Other foods that people, almost all your fast foods have more. Breads have it, crackers have it. I mean, things that you don't even think about. They taste savory, they taste wonderful. You really have to learn how to read your labels. Absolutely.
Okay.
And sauces. So even if you have something that's pretty plain, you say, well, it can't be anything. Obviously, the fast foods, they usually have lots of sauces already built in with them. But even if you're making it at home, ketchup can be a full serving of carbohydrate. And of course, we like it. So mustards are better. Usually they're not. But any of your pickle relishes, any of your barbecue sauce, it doesn't taste sweet. It's full of sugar. So better to make some of your own so you know what's in it. And I understand, absolutely. I'm a busy grandma, kind of second time around mom. And I understand that trying to cook and do all those things, people are listening and saying, yeah, right, lady. But if you get it into a habit and you make it once a week or something, then it doesn't have to be such a dismal outcome. Sausages can have it. Any of your coffees. I think people always say, well, coffee and tea is just fine, but it's what we add to the coffee and tea. So if we just had plain coffee and put some almond milk in it or some regular milk in it, we would be fine. But it's all those, and if you look at it, they can be 1,000 calories. I mean, those coffee drinks.
Yeah.
So 1,000 calories and a ton of sugar, more than 50 grams, way more than we are supposed to have in a day. And all of our soft drinks, they use, again, the high fructose syrup in it, and those actually make you want to have more. It's a really important asset for them because when you drink it, you want more. It actually makes you feel like I want some more. And the levels are exceedingly high. So I think of all the sauces. I think of people don't think about when they're taking their cereals, et cetera. They don't think about where those sugars are. They need to read the labels and see what's in those foods.
Let's talk about breakfast cereals and instant oatmeal. Lots of people think that oatmeal sounds very healthy, but can you talk about that a little bit? How do we know if oatmeal is really healthy for us?
Again, read your label. Almost everything. I used to tell my clients that when you eat a packaged item, it's pre-digested for you. So when you eat oatmeal that you cook from scratch and then you add your fruit or whatever into it, you're eating more fiber. Your body has to spend some more energy to get rid of it. So it doesn't affect you as much. And when you eat the packages, not only is it pre-digested, but they've added a lot of sugar and again, things in it to make you want to eat more of it. So you really, I don't advise any of those, except if you're on a camping trip, there are times that you need to use some pre-made foods. But for your day-to-day and for your economy, it would be better to buy the old-fashioned Quaker oats or the steel milled oats and just make them up. And, you can make a batch for several days. That's what my children and I do because we're all really busy. And then we just heat it up in the microwave that morning.
You mentioned earlier about the milks that we might put into our coffees. Lots of people swap out for non-dairy milks like almond milk, rice milk. Is there a milk that's lower in sugar that we should be thinking about?
Well, I think the milk sugars, the lactose that's in milk sugar is still considered healthy. And for other reasons, the amount of protein in cow's milk is more than in any of the drinks we just talked about. The second most protein milk would be soy milk, but it does have sugars, just like natural sugars, just like any others. There's no added sugar to almond milk, but there's also only 1 gram of protein. So people that are allergic to milk, there are resources, or people that just don't want to have cow's milk around for some reason. They can use rice milk is higher in carbohydrates. Soy milk is about in the middle. Almond milk and coconut milk have none, but they also don't have the protein. So you're one thing for another. But what I would say about all of that is any of those would be better to drink than a soft drink. And old-fashioned water, whether you bubble it up, plain or not, would be best. Getting enough fluids, especially if you've had a treat, is really important to kind of get that washed down.
To protect go ahead.
I'm sorry. The other food I was thinking about greatly about the foods that people find are, they don't think it's a problem, would be dried fruit. So dried fruit is concentrated. So it's still a fruit. And I'll have people tell me it's a fruit, right? But it is a fruit. But because it's so concentrated, the amount of sugars are sky high, and just for a little bit. And the other problem with dried fruits is it sticks to your teeth. And we didn't talk about that, but it's really important to remember that when your mouth is full of those sugars, whether it's in a constant way from a sugary beverage or sticky way from sugary foods, it actually it mixes with the plaque bacteria in your body, and it makes an acid. And that acid, no matter who you are, even if you say, I've got great teeth, it starts affecting the teeth and making tiny holes, which get bigger. The other thing is with any of these that go around the gum and sit there, like when you're sipping a Coke constantly, or even drinking lemonade, which again, when people think of things that they don't recognize as high in sugar, all those types of drinks also, it sits around on your gums, and then it can cause periodontal disease. Again, the bacteria grows. So we really want to be cognizant of that.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks, Carrie. We are up against another break, so we need to pause here. But Carrie mentioned reading labels. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Carrie Fairbrother is still with us, and let's talk about reading labels, Carrie. So I think most of us know those OS words, glucose, fructose, sucrose. Are those different, or are they all just sugar?
Well, they are different, but as far as our concern of knowing that they're added to the food, then they would be the same. But there are other words that you might want to see. You might see dextrose, you might see maltose. Sucrose you'll see a lot, monosaccharide, disaccharides, even honey, molasses, and syrups will be mentioned, and then fruit concentrates. And I say those words just because I want people to look at them and say, oh, that's going to be sugar too. Usually they're going to say added sugar, or they'll say natural sugar, one of those things in it. And again, you want to know that if they're adding sugar, you probably want to steer away from that. I think that most people, when they're buying a mix, they don't think that a cornbread mix or something like that, a muffin mix, is going to have too much sugar in it. But indeed, they usually do. And a lot of times it's kind of hidden in that fructose because, again, your body can't really use it for energy that much, but it's going to be metabolized a little differently, but it's going to make you want more.
So there's been a big push about folks staying away from high fructose corn syrup, and
right.
Companies are now advertising that they don't have that in their product. Is it really that much worse than other sugars? Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. That's what I was trying to say. With not the natural fructose, it would be fruit sugar that you normally have. But when you have the high fructose, it actually doesn't get metabolized the same way. And so when I mentioned soda belly, that's because, again, the liver is turning it into fat. And so we do need to try to steer clear from it. People will say, why hasn't it been taken off the market completely? And it's because it does sell. I mean, when we have it, we want more. So really right now, I think you mostly see it in a lot of our beverages will have it in there. It's sweeter than sugar. So it makes it even more powerful for industry to want to use it.
Okay.
But yes, I've noticed lots of crackers will say none in it. You now will notice that. And that's what you should be looking for.
Okay. There are other packages that might say no sugar added. Can we trust that on a package?
Well, that just means they haven't added additional sugar, but there may be sugars that are in the actual product. So you need to read again the percentage of sugar and see, because really less is best. And if it's zero, you feel pretty confident that that's a package you might want to use.
So if it says sugar-free, is that the same or different from no sugar added?
No. Sugar-free just means that it has less than half a gram of sugar per serving. And you have to be careful when you're reading labels that you know what the serving is. I've had many people come to me and they say, see, there's only 14 grams of carb in this cereal, and it will say a quarter of cup. And I really don't know anybody who eats a quarter of a cup of cereal. I've not met them yet. Let's put it that way. So
for sure.
if that were true, you'd be fine. But instead, they're eating a cup. And so that's 4 times 14. So make sure you read your portion sizes when you're doing it.
What if the package says no refined sugar? What does that mean?
It just means that they haven't added that sucrose types of sugar, but they could have they could have fruit concentrate. So you still have to read it more carefully. And again, when you're looking, if you see a lot of words that you can't pronounce and very long, I would probably steer away from it because it means either a different type of additive, something. My best advice is whatever you can eat most naturally, most that you make, that you start with fresh food, nutritionally, you're going to be better off. And save those specially sweet. I'm not saying people aren't going to have anything sweet. I've had clients that actually had to really restrict their carbohydrates, but they gave themselves one day a week where they were less restricted. So they were excellent most of the time. And then one day a week, they did not. One day a week, they ate, perfectly. Perfectly for what their little desires were. So a lot of people were Sundays because they went to church and they wanted to have the treats after church.
Sure. So is that your general guideline or tip, or what would you say to folks who are trying to cut sugar out of their diet? Just make everything at home?
I would say either make it or buy fresh produce, even frozen vegetables. Make sure the frozen vegetables is not in a sauce or something that would make it have extra sugar or salt. But I would also say nobody can do this from eating the way we do as a population to being, in quotes, perfect. So if most of us would just do about 80% of the time, that extra 20%, which is going to be holidays and probably, treats now and then. And for your kiddos who've been used to having treats, limit it to 1 treat a day. And when we're eating, have our normal amount, or, think about that plate method where you have half a plate of vegetables that are non-carbohydrate rich, a quarter of the plate or a small hand like this of your carbohydrate and a quarter of lean protein. If you did that 80% of the time again, you'd be fine. And then people say, well, what about, I want more. Give yourself that 20 minutes to let yourself digest. Make sure you're drinking water with your food so you're not just thirsty and you think you're hungry.
Okay, perfect.
And allow yourself a treat. Allow that 1 treat a day in a normal portion size, even for the kids. You can whittle down after that, but you can't just go from 100% and get rid of liquid carbohydrates, so liquid sugar.
Okay.
So get rid of those sports drinks, all those things, the juices, the pops that we know about, the rich teas, the coffee drinks, get those out, and people will dramatically feel better.
Okay, great, Carrie. Thank you so much. That's all of our time, but tons of great information packed into our time together. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you'll come back and see us again next week. Until then, stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life. Have a great week, everybody.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health in partnership with AARP Montana. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the Healthy Living for Life logo. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.